I've written this as a reusable manuscript. Revelation, the unveiling of Jesus Christ. Introduction. The book of Revelation is often approached with fear, confusion, and endless speculation. Yet its opening words tell us exactly what it is: the revelation of Jesus Christ. Revelation 1:1. It is not primarily a book about beasts, judgments, or disasters. It is a book that unveils the victorious Christ and reveals the completion of God's redemptive purposes. John wrote to 7 real churches facing real struggles. They were living in a time of persecution, pressure, and uncertainty. The message was not intended to be a mystery for people thousands of years later to decipher. It was written to encourage those believers by showing them that Jesus reigns, his kingdom cannot fail, and his promises are certain. The exalted Christ. John begins with a vision of the risen Lord walking among the lampstands. Jesus is not distant from his people. He is present among his churches. He is the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. His death accomplished redemption. His resurrection secured victory. His authority extends over every earthly power. The churches were reminded that no emperor, government, or persecutor could overcome the one who holds the keys of death and Hades. The message remains the same today. Christ reigns. His work is finished. His kingdom stands secure. The letters to the 7 churches. The 7 churches represent real congregations facing real challenges. Some had lost their first love. Some endured persecution. Some tolerated false teaching. Others were spiritually complacent. Yet throughout every letter, Jesus calls his people to trust him and remain steadfast. The focus is not on earning God's acceptance, but on living in the reality of what Christ has already accomplished. Because believers belong to him, they are called to walk in faith, hope, and love. The churches are continually pointed back to the sufficiency of Christ. The throne above all thrones. In chapters 4 and 5, John is taken into heaven. While chaos seems to dominate the earth, heaven reveals a different reality. God remains seated upon his throne. Nothing occurs outside his sovereign purpose. At the center stands the Lamb who was slain. The Lion of Judah has conquered, not through military power, but through sacrificial love. The Lamb receives worship because he redeemed a people from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. The vision reminds believers that history is not controlled by human rulers, but by the Lamb upon the throne. Judgment and covenant transition. The visions of seals, trumpets, and bowls reveal God's judgments against a rebellious covenant system that rejected its Messiah. The language draws heavily from Old Testament prophetic imagery. The prophets often described national judgments using cosmic language: darkened suns, falling stars, shaking heavens, and collapsing mountains. These symbols communicate the downfall of kingdoms and the end of old orders. The destruction portrayed throughout Revelation culminates in the complete removal of the Old Covenant age and the public vindication of Christ and his people. The Lamb who was rejected becomes the King who is openly acknowledged. What appeared to be the triumph of opposition was actually the confirmation of Christ's victory. The fall of Babylon. Babylon symbolizes the great persecuting power that stood against God's people. Its wealth, influence, and apparent strength seemed unstoppable. Yet, in a moment it fell. The lesson is clear. Every system built upon pride, self-righteousness, and resistance to God ultimately collapses. Only the kingdom established by Christ remains. The saints are called to look beyond temporary powers and place their confidence in the everlasting reign of the Lord. The triumph of the King. The vision of Christ riding upon the white horse presents him as the victorious king. His battle is not fought with earthly weapons. The sword proceeds from his mouth, symbolizing the power of his word. The victory belongs entirely to him. The enemies of God's purpose cannot prevail because Christ has already secured the outcome through his death, resurrection, and exaltation. The book repeatedly points believers away from fear and toward confidence in the reign of Jesus. A new heaven and a new earth. The final chapters reveal the glorious fulfillment of God's covenant promises. John sees a new heaven and a new earth. The holy city descends from God. The dwelling place of God is with his people. The imagery communicates restored fellowship, covenant fulfillment, and the fullness of God's presence among his redeemed people. The city has no temple because the Lord himself is its temple. There is no need for another sacrifice because the work of redemption is complete. There is no separation because God dwells with his people. The river of life flows freely, and the curse is removed. Everything points to the blessings secured through the finished work of Christ. Conclusion. Revelation is not ultimately a book of fear, but a book of victory. It reveals Jesus Christ as the reigning King, the victorious Lamb, and the faithful Savior. It declares that God's purposes cannot fail. It shows the passing away of the old and the establishment of the new. It proclaims that Christ reigns, his kingdom endures, and his people share in his victory. The final message of Revelation is a message of hope. The Lamb has overcome. The King reigns. The kingdom stands. And the presence of God is forever with his people.